In Egypt's official records, the Osirion was built by Seti over 3,000 years ago. Its purpose, age, and even its creator apparently settled beyond question. But archaeologists soon uncovered something no textbook could explain. The Osirion lay hidden 15 meters beneath the sand, constructed with massive granite blocks and an engineering style centuries out of place. This new timeline raises a disturbing possibility: an entire chapter of advanced civilization overlooked beneath our feet. So, what led Egypt's greatest pharaohs to claim a monument that history can't explain? Formal dating of the Osirion rests on a foundation of hard evidence, not speculation. In 1933, the Egypt Exploration Society published a detailed report documenting the presence of Seti I's cardu carved directly into the stonework of the Oyun's entrance lintel. This royal signature, inscribed with the throne name Men Matra, appears in a position that would have been impossible to add after construction. The blocks themselves were set with the cartu already present. Additional carts and brief hieroglyphic texts referencing Siwan's surface on several granite and sandstone elements throughout the site. These marks are not scattered graffiti. They are embedded in the core masonry, lending weight to the argument that the monument was built, or at the very least completed, during Seti's reign around 1294 to 1279 BCE. The 1933 EES report, led by archaeologists Henri Frankfurt and Adrien de Buch, cataloged these inscriptions with methodical precision. Their field notes, still archived in London, include inked diagrams showing the exact placement of Seti's cartu on the main lintel and threshold blocks. Photographs from the same campaign reveal the sharpness of the hieroglyphs, consistent with New Kingdom toolwork and undisturbed by later erosion. No earlier royal names or alternative attributions have ever been identified in the Orion's masonry or fill. In addition to the visible inscriptions, ostrich pottery shards used for administrative notes were recovered from the sand fill during excavation. Several bear the names and titles of Setiworm's officials, referencing the transport of stone blocks and the allocation of labor for temple construction at Abydos. These records, cross-referenced with Seti's wider building program, place the Oyon firmly within his known works. For decades, this inscriptional evidence has formed the backbone of the academic consensus. Egyptologists point to Seti Waror's unmistakable cartu, the administrative araka, and the absence of any pre-19th dynasty material as proof that the Osirion belongs to the New Kingdom. The monument's alignment and relationship to the adjacent temple of Seti I further reinforce this conclusion. In the eyes of mainstream archaeology, the case appears closed. The Osirion is a product of Seti I's reign, and its official history is written in stone. Yet, this confidence rests on a puzzle: the Osirion's depth, its unusual construction, and the fact that it was already buried when Seti's temple was built above it, challenge the straightforward reading of the evidence. The next layer of the mystery lies not in what is inscribed, but in what lies beneath a deeper mystery. Excavation of the Oyon revealed an unsettling truth. The monument lay hidden beneath nearly 15 meters of compacted sand and debris. When the Egypt Exploration Society began systematic digging in the early 20th century, their teams descended through layer after layer of fill, finding no trace of earlier structures or activity above the Osirion's roof. The entire complex was sealed off from the world, as if intentionally entombed. At the lowest point, a solid wall of sandstone blocks blocked the only processional entrance, its masonry untouched since antiquity. Field notes from Henry Frankfurt's 1925 campaign record: the painstaking removal of sand, with laborers working by lamplight in a space so deep that sunlight never reached the chamber floor. Measurements confirm the Osirion's floor sits over 15 men below the modern surface, far deeper than any other New Kingdom monument at Abydos. The sandfill showed no signs of natural collapse or flood layering. It was uniform, dense, and undisturbed. The blocking wall itself bore the unmistakable cartu of Seti I, yet it sealed an interior that had been isolated long before his reign. Engineers mapped the surrounding terrain and found no ramps, stairways, or construction debris above the Oyun's roof. The site had been buried in a single deliberate act. The monument's placement far below the level of Seti I's temple and the desert plateau defied the usual logic of Egyptian construction. While most temples rose proudly above ground, the Osirion was hidden, its massive stones locked away beneath tons of sand. The sheer depth raised uncomfortable questions. If SI had built the Oyan, why entomb it under his own temple? Why leave no access, no ceremonial approach, no visible trace at the surface? Frankfurt's diagrams show the Oiran's chambers preserved in near-perfect condition, protected by their burial. The only disturbances came from the excavation itself. The monument's isolation, the engineered fill, and the blocked entrance all pointed to a history more complicated than the simple narrative of New Kingdom construction. As the last of the sand was cleared, the unsettling reality became impossible to ignore. The Osirion was not just out of place in style. It was out of place in the very ground beneath Abydos, sealed away as if its presence needed to be forgotten. Moving a single Oirian pillar from Aswan to Abydos required more than ambition. It demanded a level of coordination and brute force that few ancient projects could rival. Each granite block, quarried nearly 900 kilometers to the south, weighed as much as 60 tons. The logistics of extracting, transporting, and precisely placing these monoliths stretched the imagination. No ramps or causeways survive at the site, but engineering models suggest the stones likely traveled by barge along the Nile, then overland for the final half-kilometer. The absence of construction debris or temporary structures above the Oiran hints at a process that left no trace, or one that relied on methods still not fully understood. Professor Aaron Kleen, a structural engineer who has spent years studying megalithic sites in Egypt, points to the sheer dimensions of the granite as evidence of advanced planning. The Oirian central chamber is lined with pillars that rise over 4 meters, each set with joints so tight that even a razor blade cannot penetrate between them. Tool marks still visible on some surfaces reveal the use of pounding stones and copper implements, techniques well documented in New Kingdom quarries, yet rarely applied at this scale. The granite itself, flecked with feldspar and quartz matches samples from the Aswan quarries, confirming its distant origin. The question of how these blocks were maneuvered into place has fueled debate for decades. Recent analysis of the site's bedrock reveals faint grooves and abrasion marks that may indicate the use of sledges or rollers. Experimental archaeology shows that with teams of up to 200 workers, lubricated sledges could drag a 60-ton block across sand at a slow but steady pace. Water poured ahead of the sledges reduced friction, a technique depicted in tomb paintings from the same era. Yet, the Oyaneran subterranean setting complicates the picture. The chamber floor sits 15 mini-hours below the present surface, at the bottom of a pit cut directly into the desert sandstone. No evidence of a permanent ramp or spiral descent has ever been found. Some engineers proposed that the builders excavated a sloping trench, used temporary sand ramps for lowering the stones, then backfilled the pit once construction was complete. Others suggest the chamber was assembled in an open quarry, then deliberately buried to create its hidden ceremonial character. What remains undisputed is the extraordinary level of organization required. Moving a single block from Aswan to Abydos by river, hauling it up from the Nile and lowering it into the Oyan's pit would have taken months of coordinated labor. Every stage left its own subtle traces: the matching of granite types, the alignment of pillar bases on the sandstone floor, the precision of the dry joints, the monument scale and technical demands stand apart from anything else in Seti's building program. For Professor Kalina, the Oiran's logistics are not just a feat of ancient engineering. They are a puzzle that continues to resist easy explanation, inviting new questions about the resources, knowledge, and intent behind its creation. Sharp lines, blank faces, and silent stone, the Osirion Central Hall delivers a jolt to anyone expecting the familiar grandeur of New Kingdom Egypt. Where Seti I's temple above brims with carved scenes and painted gods, the chamber below presents only unbroken granite. Pillars rise from the floor in 2 parallel rows, each block joined to its neighbor with such precision that even a slip of paper cannot slide between them. The joints run in irregular, almost polygonal patterns, reminiscent of Cyclopean masonry found at Giza or even Pharaoh Meni, not the squared, mortared courses of Seti's era. No hieroglyphs march across the surfaces, no reliefs, no painted carts, no prayers to Osiris or the king. The granite stands untouched, as if the builders had no need, or perhaps no right, to decorate the stone. This absence is not a matter of erosion. The walls simply were never inscribed. Egyptologists have scoured the chamber for even a trace of the typical New Kingdom signature, but the Osirion remains mute. Only a handful of carts, all belonging to Seti, appear on later blocks or at the entrance, never on the main granite itself. The aesthetic contradiction is impossible to ignore. In the New Kingdom, temples were more than places of worship. They were public statements, every inch covered with imagery and text that proclaimed the pharaoh's power and the god's favor. The Osirion's undecorated surfaces suggest a different intent or a different age. The granite blocks themselves show no attempt at ornamentation, only the marks of pounding stones and careful abrasion. The color palette is stark rose granite and pale sandstone, with sharp shadows cast by the massive beams overhead. The architectural language is all weight and silence, not the narrative storytelling of Seti's halls above. The chamber's geometry also breaks with tradition. Instead of axial corridors and processional avenues, the Osirion's plan is compact and box-like, its central platform surrounded by a flooded moat. The pillars are not spaced for display, but for structural necessity, bearing the load of the stone roof with no concessions to ceremony. The tightness of the joints, achieved without mortar, hints at a level of craftsmanship rarely seen after the Old Kingdom. Engineers have measured gaps less than a millimeter wide, an achievement more often associated with the earliest Egyptian stonework than with the more relaxed tolerances of the New Kingdom. What stands out most is what is missing. In a culture that left its mark on every surface, the Osirion's granite remains deliberately blank. The silence of the stone raises questions about who built it, for whom, and why the usual rules of royal commemoration did not apply. The Osirion style is not just unusual, it is alien to its supposed era, a relic whose very design refuses to fit the expected timeline. Dr. Lina Mansour's team arrived at Abydos with a different set of questions. Instead of searching for lost inscriptions or hidden chambers, they focused on the Oyon's water, a resource that had defied every attempt at drainage for nearly a century. The team collected samples from the central basin and from seepage points along the chamber's lowest joints, tracking how quickly the water returned after each pumping session. Measurements showed the basin could refill within hours, even when more than 500 gallons per minute were removed. This rapid replenishment didn't match the behavior of Nile water or shallow groundwater in the region. Chemical and isotopic analysis revealed a signature unlike any local source. The water's oxygen 18 and deuterium ratios were distinct from both the Nile and the surrounding desert aquifers, showing a blend of ancient Nile infiltration and deep pressurized groundwater. The isotopic fingerprints indicated the aquifer's isolation for at least 3,000 years, far longer than the span of Seti I's reign. Conductivity and mineral content supported the conclusion. This water had circulated underground for millennia before ever reaching the Oyon's floor. The stone itself told a parallel story. Erosion rings and salt crusts on the granite pillars, mapped by Dr. Mansour's team, showed patterns of long-term water exposure. These features were absent on the nearby temple of Seti I, which sits above the local water table. The Osirion's unique flooding, combined with the aquifer's chemical isolation and the measured erosion, established a minimum age for the structure's interaction with groundwater, one that could not be explained by New Kingdom construction alone. Across Egypt, a handful of monuments share the Osirion's unsettling sense of displacement. The Serapeum at Saqqara, for example, houses enormous granite sarcophagi in a network of underground tunnels that remain chronically damp despite centuries of attempts to control the water. Yet, for all the engineering on display, the capium yields almost nothing in the way of dynastic debris, no pottery shards, no tools, no traces of the daily life that usually clutter ancient sites. The silence is matched at the Osirion, where the sandfill produced only a scattering of New Kingdom ostricha, all tied to Seti I's construction and nothing earlier. This absence is not limited to Abydos or Saqqara. At the Valley Temple on the Giza Plateau, and beneath the sands of Dashur, other megalithic structures defy easy placement in Egypt's official timeline. Their walls are cut from massive blocks, fitted with uncanny precision and left largely undecorated. An architectural language that seems to speak from another age. In each case, later dynasties arrive, claim the sites, and leave their mark. But the original builders remain unnamed. The pattern is impossible to ignore. Sites like the Osirion and Serapam do not fit the sequence of Egyptian history as it is taught. Instead, they suggest a chapter written in stone and then erased, inherited by pharaohs who understood the power of the past, but not always its origins. The question lingers: who built these places, and what compelled later rulers to preserve them so completely? The answers remain hidden, locked beneath the weight of centuries and the silence of undecorated stone. Today, the Orion's silent stones still defy easy explanation, reminding us that accepted timelines aren't always settled facts. As new technologies challenge old assumptions, our understanding of early civilization stands on shifting ground. The real significance isn't just in what's buried, but in how we question what we think we know. Some answers may only emerge when we dare to look beneath the surface. What do you think the Osirion hides?